Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is the Merge Medical Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jeff Brown, with my co-host, Dr. Jeff Cole. We're joined today by Frank Ahmann, CEO of Triflo. And with that, tell us about Triflo.
Thanks very much, Jeff and Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here. And Triflo Cardiovascular is a company based in Newport Beach, California, that has designed and is now testing in the clinic a novel and unique, minimally invasive transcatheter system to treat tricuspid valve regurgitation. It is unique in that it treats a much larger portion of patients than other devices that are eligible for this disease that affects millions and millions of patients. It does so with a minimally invasive design, with a minimalistic design that works in tandem with the native valve instead of replacing it. So we're very happy to develop this system and have taken it to human clinical trials.
It seems I'm an orthopedic surgeon, but what I have learned just through my father having a procedure for the mitral valve and what I've just heard through colleagues, it seems like most of the solutions percutaneous have come for the left side of the heart. And can you explain what were the challenges on the right side of the heart? Why is the tricuspid valve the next frontier? And can you explain how you guys are tackling that?
Yeah, so the tricuspid valve and the right side of the heart present very different anatomical, morphological, and hemodynamic challenges than the left side of the heart. And so simply adapting the designs that worked in the mitral and the aortic valve has turned out to be rather difficult for the right side of the heart. And it really called for a de novo approach where we can actually design a device that will adapt to the native tricuspid valve, but also to the shape of the annulus, the shape of the orifice, that is completely unique. And so far, um, the success rate with the other devices has been minimal, again, because they had different challenges that didn't apply.
Tell us about the competition.
So the competition is typical in the cardiovascular space. There are four large global companies that are operating in primarily the commercial area: Abbott, Medtronic, Edwards Lifesciences, and Boston Scientific. And we have then a large number of smaller companies and startups like us who are really developing new approaches. And in the tricuspid space at present, there are two approaches that are effective. One is the TriClip device, which is really adapted from the mitral valve area. And the other one comes from Edwards, the Evoque valve, which is a complete replacement of the tricuspid valve. We believe that these are applicable to only a small percentage of the patients, and so they're not addressing the wide patient population.
So I think the answer to this may be obvious, but if you could just leave the position where you are and jump into one of these other companies at the same level, same connection, so to speak, would you trade, or do you feel like you've got the best? You've got the best thing that's out there.
No, I've joined the company relatively recently, right? I've in comparison to the co-founders of the company who have been added since the ideation 5 years ago, I joined in September of this year, and I did so because I am firmly believing that this is a much smarter approach, much more specific approach to the tricuspid valve. And so far, what we have seen in the clinical results confirm that. We are not only seeing a reduction of regurgitation, but we're also seeing a improvement of the entire right side of the heart in terms of the function of the right ventricle. One issue that we're really interested in is the measurement of what we call TAPSE, tricuspid annular plane systolic excursion, and that's basically the measure of performance, if you will, of the ventricle and of the valve itself. And so we don't see that the replacement device is actually changing that measure, that TAPSE measure, which is all critical. Whereas with our device, what we have seen in our patients is that it significantly improves that. So uh, again, that's a little bit about the replacement technology.
That's interesting. So you've seen improved TAPSE in the human subjects that have been done, and I guess you did this in a porcine model.
That's correct. So, you know, it's really fascinating to see in our cases, in particular in the human cases, that this is much more, and it is about much more than regurgitation. Um, there is also a question of what is the function of the right ventricle and the right atrium in these situations? Is that being improved, or are you just improving the regurgitation? We find that when you are improving the overall heart function, there is a significant improvement, and eventually this will be borne out by clinical data, but you'll find an improvement in how the patient feels, exercise capacity very significantly, quality of life. All of these things will come not just from reducing the regurgitation, but actually from improving the function of the ventricle itself. And that is one of the things that we can measure. TAPSE, we measure such things as volume of the right ventricle, blood volume inside,
Mm-hmm.
which we have reduced in our patients. And so this bodes well for the long-term outcomes in terms of what it means for the patient, which
Mm-hmm.
is feeling better and feeling more vital, and ultimately also what matters to the reimbursement agencies and the payers, which is fewer hospitalizations, a better economic outlook as well from an expenditure point of view for these types of diseases.
That's
That's great.
fantastic. Tell us about the team, the founders.
So there are three founders that got together initially 5 years ago. One of them happens to be a cardiac surgeon, interventional cardiologist, who is J.P. Ucia, professor at the University of Rome, who has been involved in several first-in-human transcatheter mitral valve and other valve technologies. Secondly is an engineer based here in Newport Beach, with plenty of experience also in pioneering some of the original mitral valve designs, Luca Pesce. And number three is a chairman of the board, Stefan Piat, who has significant experience from Abbott and other companies, knowledge really of the market for transcatheter technologies. So those are the three founders of the company, and they're still with us, continuing the development.
How about your IP and your patent portfolio? Do you feel like you're well protected?
Absolutely. So the company at this stage has 5 issued patents that cover US, Europe, China, and there are several other patents in the works. I should also say that the patents cover not only the tricuspid valve design, as we have described it before, but also is applicable to adapting to the mitral valve when the day comes that we have to do that. So everything is very well protected at this stage.
And tell us about the stage of development. Where are you at in that?
So the first 4 years of the company were spent doing all the initial work and significant amount of preclinical testing, including all the required porcine, chronic, and acute studies,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately culminating in the first in-human clinical trial, which we carried out with 4 patients since May of 2023. We finalized that treatment portion, are now following them up, but success has been significant, particularly considering the severity of the patient status. as first-in-human patients typically are, compassionate use. But we're now gearing up for the next clinical trial, which is an early feasibility study here in the US and in Europe.
So and Frank, you can correct me if I'm saying any of this wrong, but Triflo has a one-size-fits-all device that improves both systolic, diastolic function by reducing tricuspid regurgitation with an easily placed percutaneous procedure, similar to the well-known TAVR that the medical community is already aware of, eliminating the need for palliative care or an invasive procedure such as sternotomy.
Absolutely. Nicely put.
Hey, Frank, I just want to thank you for joining us here today. This has been a fascinating conversation for me personally, and I know that the listeners will find it fascinating as well. You know, we strive to have guests whose products and or services check mark several boxes. One, number one, they have to help patients, and number two, they have to help physicians do their jobs and make their jobs easier. And number three, have to at least have the potential for financial improvement in the lives of the Merge Medical members. And you definitely checkmark that box. Thank you so much for joining us. With that, guys, this is the Merge Medical 10 and 10 podcast. We're out.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, everyone.